love life? Do you love life? Do you really love life? Do you love life?
Welcome to the We Love Life podcast. Together we'll explore how the church is being united and mobilized to create a culture of love and life. Through inspiring conversations with pastors, ministry leaders, and business owners, we'll dive into stories of transformation, faith in action, and the incredible impact that happens when the church comes together to shine the light in the darkest places in our world. Join us as we learn how God is moving through His people to create a culture of love and life that will bring an end to abortion and the orphan crisis. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the We Love Life podcast. Appreciate all of you guys joining us, all of you guys that are watching, that are listening. Those who are brand new, welcome to the We Love Life podcast. We appreciate you being here. Glad to have you here as our guest. We encourage you all to like, subscribe, share, however you listen to this content or watch this content. Please share it with others. And also, you can reach out to us. We'll give you some information to reach out to us, and our guest will also give you some information to reach out to him at the end of this episode. So we invite you guys to do that. My name is Daniel Parks. I serve as Executive Director for Love Life, and we're honored to serve the church through the ministry of Love Life. And I'm joined, as oftentimes, as almost always, by my partner in righteousness, not partner in crime, Brian Ottinger. How's it going, brother?
It's going very well. I just got back last weekend. Took a trip to Detroit.
Yep.
I guess Dallas is the big D, so I guess that makes Detroit the little D, or maybe the medium D. I don't know. Got to go spend some time with our city director, Roy.
Yeah, Roy, my homeboy.
That's it. Name's so nice, they named him twice.
That's right.
Roy Squared, and his lovely wife, Jill, who is helping keep him alive, amongst other things, which is quite a tall task.
Yeah.
In all seriousness, they're doing a tremendous job up there. You know, I've been overseeing that region off and on for the past 4 or 5 years. We kind of joked here on staff that we think all of us at some point were the regional director over Detroit. But I remember being there in 2021 and 2022, and just to see where God has brought it from there until now is pretty phenomenal.
For real.
One quick story I'll share is we meet there on 8 Mile Road. Famous Eminem, right? Spaghetti on your shirt and all that stuff, freestyle battles. And
I don't know
all
about
that.
spaghetti on your shirt, but
from the movie 8 Mile, but
Okay.
There's a bar on there where he talks about having spaghetti on his shirt. Palms are ready, knees weak, arms are heavy, spaghetti on your shirt, something, whatever. Anyways, I'm not a big Eminem fan, but anyways, that's people know 8 Mile through that song. So what they don't know about 8 Mile is there's like 2 abortion centers that are like right across the street from each other. And so that's where we chose to do our prayer walks. And I remember a couple of years ago, we were in the parking lot there's a church building up there. We're like, man, wouldn't it be awesome if we could use that church building? Because, they got pretty inclement weather in Detroit.
Yeah.
And so I remember meeting in this parking lot, and we start our prayer walks there, and, eventually go into the abortion center and pray and call out and all that stuff. But now, by God's grace, we are meeting in the building where we used to look at and point and say, wouldn't it be awesome if one day we met there? So it was really cool to be in the building that we used to dream about being in, and just to see how God is raising up volunteers and pastors and the church all across that city, and just to see Roy's leadership. I mean, he has grown leaps and bounds. He's a tremendous leader, and everyone affirming him. It was a great trip to be a part of. So I am super grateful for the work in Detroit, but also to be able to take my former co-pastor. You guys have heard me talk about Jade Stanford on the show before in the past, and he got to come with me, and man, he did a tremendous job. Actually, we probably should get him on the podcast sometime, Daniel.
Yeah, we need Roy and we need Jade on here.
Yeah, all those guys. So anyways, feeling pretty good about all that.
Cool, man. Yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah, we need to get those guys on for sure and share what's going on in Detroit. But with this episode, we're going to be talking to our brother Theo. And like I told him before we started recording, I'm not going to attempt to say his last name.
You should try, man.
So, yeah, he just told it to me. I think it's Facinoli. I think it's
Dude, look at
how
you,
you
bro.
say it.
You got to do it like this.
Sure.
You got to say Facinoli.
Yeah, Facinoli.
And then it's like,
so,
no matter how you say it.
I'll give you the floor, Brian, to just do a little intro of the connection you guys have, and then we'll let Theo share a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Theo, for joining. Theo, I got connected to his ministry actually through somebody on staff was going through stillbirth, and they were really struggling with that, as you can imagine, the pain from that. And she got connected with the ministry, Out of the Ashes ministry, and their ministry exists to come alongside people who are, have experienced that kind of loss, whether it's stillbirth, miscarriage, even abortion, right? People who've lost a child. And a lot of times in the body of Christ, we don't know how to talk about those sorts of things. And so it's good to have ministries like theirs that are helping equip the church to that end. And so I recently made a new friend who I found out that they lost a child. And I was just hearing the pain in my new friend's voice about the situation they're going through. And I remembered, hey man, there's a ministry that helped my other friend. And so I was like, hey Theo, let's get on a call sometime. Actually, no, even before that, I just reached out and said, hey, can y'all help these people? And they did. And I thought, man, that's really cool. And it was gospel centered, and it was very personal. It was very loving. And so I said, man, I got to get to know these guys. So I jumped on a call with Theo, got to know him, and realized right away, like, we need to bring him on the podcast because the things he's going to talk about directly impact people that we will minister to, but it also directly impacts just people in the church. And it's such a sensitive topic. And sometimes you don't talk about sensitive things. And when you do that, you actually don't bring healing. Yeah. And sometimes you talk about sensitive things in insensitive ways, and you can harm that way. So I really like the approach that Theo and their ministry has. And so Theo, we'll kick it over to you, brother. What details did I miss? Tell us a little bit about your family life, man. Who are you?
Yeah, well, thank you all both for having me on here, Brian and Daniel. Super excited to share about the ministry and just to have this opportunity, this platform too, and partnership with y'all's organization too. So, yeah, I'm Theo Facinoli, and my wife, her name is Brittany. We've been married for almost 10 years. And a little bit about our family. I'm sure we'll get into the nitty-gritty story, but we have 6 kids, 2 who are here and 4 who are in heaven. I'll talk about the 2 that are here right now. Our oldest, her name is Tessa, and she will be 8 in the fall. And then our youngest here on earth is Seth, and he will be 4 next month. And then the 4, I know I'll talk about those stories. We have a daughter who is stillborn, and then we have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl who were miscarried as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, brother, I appreciate you sharing that. Again, appreciate you coming on and being open to share, because sometimes, again, like Brian said, with sensitive topics, we just don't talk about them. And if we don't talk about these things, it's kind of like a, sickness or whatever it might be that gets no attention. We just don't want to talk about it, don't want to deal with it, and then it doesn't get healing, and things kind of fester under the surface. So appreciate what you guys are doing. What's the name of the ministry? It's Out of the Ashes, right?
Yeah, Out of the Ashes Foundation. Yeah.
Out of the Ashes Foundation. Okay. So, tell us a little bit about Out of the Ashes Foundation, as far as like how long you guys been doing this, and I'd love to get into even some of the stories. I want to get into your story for sure right away, but then even some of the testimonies and stories that you guys have seen over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Out of the Ashes, it started, from our own personal loss. So, it started technically in 2020. Was the first thing that Out of the Ashes ever did. We host an annual 5K and remembrance walk every fall in the October timeframe. October is actually Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. And so the first year, right after we had experienced our first loss, which was our daughter who was stillborn, we were just looking for a way to do something to honor her around her first birthday. And so as we kind of pursued this, I always tell people I'm an idea man and my wife is an executor.
Sure.
So she's,
Amen.
yes, she's a graphic designer by trade. So anything that pops into my head, she can actually make it happen. Right.
That's great.
So, So yeah, that first race, I think our vision, I kind of had a vision from the Lord about doing just a candlelit 5K and again, our daughter Hannah's honor. And we kind of imagined maybe like 30, 40, 50 friends would come around, walk with us. That first race, we had, 250 people there. There were plenty of people there that came to support our family, but there were also, a dozen or more stories, and other
Yeah.
families that were walking through it. And so I think it was kind of born, I always say, from that first event. We looked around, there's, candles everywhere, there's 250 people there, probably 30 families that had been affected at that point that had their community around. And so the technical mission of Out of the Ashes is the focus on, like what Brian said, the community, right? So we know that 1 in 4 families walk through loss, 1 in 6 families walk through infertility. And so it's around us everywhere, just like Brian mentioned in his workplace. And then also, I think your friends in the neighborhood that you're in. So it's around us everywhere. And so as a community, especially as a community of believers, how do we support people when they're walking through this, when they're grieving for the months and the years that they're grieving this, right?
Yeah.
And we saw that happen in that first race. Was a kind of a community come together, community of believers specifically offering that healing, really living out the biblical truth of carrying one another's burdens. So it's kind of where it came from, and that's our mission, is to equip the community to do that, to be able to surround those families.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good, man. Yeah, appreciate you sharing that. And obviously, as you've already shared, you and your wife Brittany, right, have suffered loss, not just once, but 4 times. And if you could kind of dive into that story, man. And I think again, sometimes it's easier for us to talk about a thing, but people really connect with stories. People really connect with others based on their experience. So share you guys' experience and what really sparked all of this in your hearts.
Yeah, and one thing I always mention when I get to share my story is, if you do know a friend or family member that's walked through loss, especially, and especially if they know the gender, if they've named the child, it's always a joy to share about them, right? To talk about them, because it's kind of your only opportunity to be, like in my sake, to be Hannah's dad, right? As anytime I
Yeah.
get to tell her story, even though it's a painful story, I get to be her dad, where I
Yeah.
don't really get to. So thanks for asking, and I always enjoy sharing her story. So yeah, I mean, I think we were the typical married couple, kind of naive to the loss and the infertility world. We were married for about a year when we got pregnant with our oldest daughter, Tessa. Pregnancy was smooth, and we had her, and everything was wonderful. And then when we kind of decided to try again, right? I feel like the perfect ideal scenario is this 18-month, 2-year gap, right? We started trying again, and very quickly got pregnant with our second. Her name's Hannah. And again, the pregnancy was smooth. My wife's the champ. We had all the traditional standard appointments, a couple ultrasounds, nothing, no signs of anything in terms of danger or risks or any of that. And so it was October 2019. My wife was about 28 weeks pregnant. She went away for the weekend on a trip with some ladies for a 30th birthday party. And during that weekend, she started texting me that, her concerns, that she hadn't really felt movement in like a day maybe. So when
Yeah.
she got home from the weekend on Sunday, it had been about 24 hours at that point where she really hadn't felt much. And all the research out there, if you Google, says around the 3rd trimester, movement kind of changes. And that's actually false. Movement should never change. So that's another thing I always tell people, especially my wife always tells women, that if there's any concern, always call.
Yeah.
and me as like the typical husband, never have experienced loss. I was just reassuring her that I'm sure everything's okay. Pregnancy is always a mental battle, right? So we kind of waited another 24 hours, and it was Monday, October 21st. My wife decided to call, and when she called, she was told to come in immediately. So I left work, joined her. We had a friend take care of my oldest daughter at the time. And when we went in, Hannah was actually still alive. At the time, we actually didn't know if she was a boy or girl. So both with Tessa
Okay.
and Hannah, we kind of waited to find out their gender. Um, and so we just referred to it as a baby at the time.
Yeah.
And at this point, she was 29 weeks. We hear a heartbeat. The OBGYN is monitoring her for about an hour, and then told us to go to the ER, or to the hospital, to labor and delivery. At that point, she said, baby's doing okay, but we just want to, do some extra tests. You're still not feeling her move, but obviously she's here with us, and we want to, do some more. And so we went to the hospital. We saw the ultrasound. She started moving. We did what's called, a BPP test, and she scored enough to stay with Brittany, right, and not have to do an emergency C-section. But they were planning on maybe another day or two to potentially do a C-section if things didn't continue to improve. So I actually left the room. I always tell this part of the story because it kind of, if you know the show, This Is Us, there's like a moment in there where her husband dies and she takes a bite of a candy bar. And like I can relate to that moment in This Is Us, where like she's being told her husband's dead and she just is in disbelief so much that she's like, I got to eat anyways.
Yeah.
So I go and get lunch, come back to the triage room. At this point, they're having trouble finding the heartbeat, but everybody's laughing, everybody's, in good mood. And I start eating a sandwich when the doctor walks in. And in that moment, the doctor walks in and tells us, I'm so sorry, something's happened in the last 15 minutes. She's no longer alive. I take a bite of my sandwich because I was starving, and I always say that part of the story because it's just this, you can relate if you've walked through grief, that like life continues, right? I'm still hungry and my daughter just died, right?
Yeah.
And so obviously, that moment hits. There's a ton of tears. There's just immense grief. I think confusion. We didn't know what stillbirth was, right? I think in that moment, you want to press an eject button and just go home, right? I don't think my wife even realized that she would have to labor and deliver at that point. It all makes sense when you think about it, but obviously when you're going through that trauma, nothing makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't really plan for things like that, right? It's
No.
just hard to process. Yeah.
No, not at all. We had a wonderful nurse team. My wife was induced, shortly thereafter. That we got confirmation that what they were telling us was true. And then she was in labor, my wife, for actually 55 hours, so almost 2.5, 3 days. And so on October 23rd, almost around midnight, she delivered Hannah Kathleen, and she was, 3 pounds, exactly what you're supposed to be at 29 weeks, 16 ounces, or 16 inches, sorry. And she looked just like her older sister. They kind of favored each other very much so. And so, those moments were sacred when we were in the hospital, in terms of being able to meet and hold and see and introduce her to my parents and my wife's dad and siblings and some friends and stuff. Bittersweet, of course, but
Yeah.
now looking back almost 6 years later, definitely sweet moments. Those were the moments we had with her. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, man.
Man, brother, just want to say thanks. Thanks for sharing this. This is, I know this is pretty heavy. It's heavy to hear, And I know probably to our listeners, whether you've experienced this sort of loss personally or not, it's heavy. And it takes a lot of courage to share what you've shared. And I know that comes from a place of, this is not something that you'll ever be over. Like, this is not like, something that you're totally going to be immune from feeling grief the rest of your life. However, at the same time, you shared your story with such like poise, and you articulated things very well. So I know it comes from a place of, you probably shared your story a lot. There's been some healing that's taken place. And, some of the people I know that have walked through this are not where you're at yet. Just if you could talk a little bit about what both the formation of, what led out of that event, but also just kind of like the practical side of, like, someone's listening to this and they've experienced that grief. What does your ministry actually do to help them, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, just to reference being able to talk about the story, I would say, it really does depend. Obviously, when it first happened, the first several times sharing the story, you couldn't really do it without tears, right? Just bawling. And I would say even now, it really depends on the day, right?
Sure.
Like, sometimes I can share and it's always sad to share the story, but like I kind of mentioned earlier, it's getting to a place of realizing, like, this is Hannah, and this is my opportunity to share a little bit about Hannah. But yeah, sometimes it can still be hard. In terms of the healing process, I mean, I think it's so different for everyone. It's also very different for women and men. I think one thing that Out of the Ashes does, that is unique in this world, is we do care for the whole family. So a lot of ministries and that's what I love about y'all's ministry too. A lot of ministries that focus on pregnancy loss specifically just have things for women. And I think as a father myself that walked through loss, that can feel isolating, right? Any of the books and the blogs and things around this type of grief tends to be written by a woman for women. And so when you do find resources that are as a dad, from another man, I mean, it's so healing to talk to one bereaved dad and another.
Yeah.
And on the same vein, right, women need it too, right? They're the ones physically, emotionally kind of carrying a really heavy burden when they walk through loss, right? They are even more connected to that child. Not that men aren't and dads aren't, but so in both ways it's needed, and the couple together in order to preserve that marriage. If there's a married couple that's walking through loss, or a relationship that's walking through that loss, that's a hard thing for a relationship to go through, right? And for both men and women to experience it so differently, right, can put a lot of tension into that marriage. So I don't know if that answered your full question, but
Yeah, that's good. So maybe practically, if you could tell us just, how the event that you did back in October of, was it 2020?
Mhm.
How that event spawned into what the ministry is now. And then just practically, what do you guys do? What do you offer for someone? If someone's listening to this and they're saying, man, I didn't know anything like this existed and I need some help, like, what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of as I mentioned, that first race in 2020, which was, COVID era, right?
Yeah.
Wait, were they making people run with masks on?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's so crazy, isn't it?
Right.
That's so
I know, it's
wild.
crazy to think about.
I know.
And honestly, that's why we have a virtual component of the race, and that was all because we launched in 2020, and we still have that component, which is a really cool component for different reasons now. But then it was
Yeah.
So we had about 250 people present that first year, and so really what spawned was, after putting and hosting that event, there was this moment. The first couple races, we actually lit lanterns. So for every person there that was walking or running for a child or for a family that's gone through infertility, there was a lantern that represented that child or family. So there's probably about 100 lanterns that went up. Now we can't do that, because of fire hazards and all. But so sorry to the city of Charlotte for doing it. But anyways, so there was this moment where we were sitting on the hill, me and Brittany, and we were just watching. And one of my friends was doing sound for the race, and we had made this playlist of just a bunch of worship songs. I can't even remember what worship song was playing, but it was just the perfect worship song was playing as these lanterns were kind of going up to heaven, so to speak, right? And there's just this moment that me and Brittany looked at each other and we were like, wow, this is more than us, right? This is not just about Hannah. Like, look at all these babies, right? Look at all these families that have, walked this grief, that are wanting something tangible to do to honor their child or honor the family that's walked through infertility. And so it really just launched this inspiration for us, and other people came, like our first board members came from that race. We became an official nonprofit. We started dreaming of what other ways throughout the year could we, serve these families, either ongoing or other events. And so, now, what is it, 5 years later, I guess this will be our 6th race this year. So 6 years later, we have kind of 3 program buckets. One is tangible tools that, friends and family can love on their friends and family that are walking through this. So that includes cards that you can send around, heavy months or holidays like Mother's Day. That includes gifts around the holidays, Mother's Day. We also do boxes for both infertility and loss. That the box, again, is for the whole family. So if you have a friend that's walking through a loss or just had an infertility discovery, this is a great way to connect them to Out of the Ashes. And the really cool thing is, we're a faith-based ministry, so we care for the griever and point them to the hope of Christ, right? Because you're not going to heal from something like this, from grief in general, but especially something so mysterious as pregnancy and infant loss or infertility, right? You're not going to heal from that without Christ's healing. There's so many questions that arise when you walk through spiritual questions that arise.
Yeah.
Walk through that. So, so those care boxes and those hope boxes, they have devotionals in there that are for the dad, the mom, and then if there is a child, we have a little children's book in there for the older sibling that might be in the house as well. So that's one program, and I can talk about the other programs too, but that's probably our biggest one. We also pay off, within that program, we also pay off medical bills that are associated with pregnancy loss. That's a big portion of our funding. Most people don't know when you walk through loss, you get slapped with a bill. The bills continue for multiple years even, which is crazy. I always say the birth of Tessa, we got the bill a month later, our oldest daughter, and never got a bill again. One of the miscarriages we walked through, we got bills totaling $12,000 for up to 2 years afterwards. And so anyways, we pay off those medical bills that are associated with loss so that, again, the family can focus on healing. So that's some big ways. And then the last thing I'll mention, we do some events throughout the year. In addition to our walk, we have a Mother's Day and a Father's Day event and some other community groups that you can join. And then we also do a mentorship program where a dad can meet with a dad, mom and mom, or couples together as well.
Yeah, brother, I appreciate what you guys are doing. Appreciate just the thoughtfulness you guys have put into this, a way to minister not just to the person, to the mom, which is mainly the focus, but to the whole family. And so appreciate that. One of the things I want to dig into, and I know we don't have a lot of time to develop this and to dig too deep into it, but as a family, we have experienced loss. My wife had a miscarriage, and it's actually our last baby was miscarried, and it's been since 2019, and so it's been a while, but it just doesn't go away. And I know for us, just processing that, there's a lot of questions that come up, and you talked about those questions and how you guys help answer those questions. But I can answer that myself, but I want from your perspective, more from the professional perspective, what are some of those questions that come up, and just practically some of the ways that we can even minister to people in our families? Because like you said, 1 out of 4 people are touched by loss in this way. So some of the questions that come up, and how do we don't answer those questions in the sense that we have the perfect answer to those things, but how do you minister to people in the midst of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing, and I'm sorry to hear that about y'all's family as well. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big ones, the questions I think that would come up when you experience this kind of loss is like, how is God good? When he took this life from me, right? So how is God still good amidst this? And I think that's a common question for, honestly, a lot of tragedy that people can experience, right? But especially in this, right? Because I think believers and unbelievers know that something mysterious happens when life is created, right? Like you can try all you want to line it up yourself, but there's something outside of us, right? And we know as believers, God, who actually ordains that life, right? And so then when it's taken from you or it's lost, I think the big question is, how is he still good amidst this? How is he still worthy of my praise, right? How can I still go to church and sing praise songs, right? I remember that being really, really hard the weeks and months after losing Hannah myself too. And so, I mean, for us, you have to meet the couple, the person where they're at in their spiritual journey. The biggest thing I always say is it's so important to ask the questions. I think if you've been raised in the church specifically and then walk through this, you're kind of afraid to have those doubts, right? To have that anger, to have that resentment or bitterness towards the Lord. And, if you read the Psalms, you read David in the Psalms, I mean, he shows all the gamut of emotion, right? Pointing fingers at the Lord and asking all the questions. And so that's our biggest thing. And that's what I tell friends and family is never, like if somebody's going through this type of grief, never Bible thump them, right? With the right answer, right? Because it's like they might even already know the right answer, but they just don't feel the right answer right now. They need that time to kind of process through like all of the questions and the anger and the doubts. And so almost like encouraging them, like, take that to the Lord. Like, I would love to talk through all those questions with you, and not presenting the answer to them, letting them find that answer, right? So and that's tricky as a friend and family, because we can see it from the perspective and we want to give them the answer, but they need to find it themselves. And I think it's important for you to encourage that wrestling, right? Wrestle with the Lord, maybe wrestle in Psalms, right? That can be the most that you could maybe advise them, right? As opposed to like, oh, well, this is the truth, right? Point them to where the truth is and let them kind of wrestle, and you kind of have those follow-up conversations with them.
Yeah, that's such great advice in general. Like, almost like no matter what you're going through, just ask good questions. I used to preach very frequently about Jesus asked 3 times as many questions as he gave answers, and he was trying to help them establish the truth in their own hearts. And I never really thought about applying that to grieving, but that's such a good principle, brother. Again, I just want to honor you and Brittany and your whole family. If you wouldn't mind sharing for us maybe just some a story or two of maybe, without naming names, just ways in which the ministry has been able to help and bless some people. Just because I think some of our listeners may be resonating with this. And then after maybe a story or two that you could share, definitely want to point people to the website and any practical, ways people could get involved beyond this podcast. It'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just crazy when you kind of lean in, share your story that's been painful, and I know you see this all throughout your organization, and then just how the Lord orchestrates the rising up of his people to come alongside and join you in the ministry effort. I mean, there's hundreds of stories within just the 5 years that we've been doing this ministry. And it can be as simple as somebody attends the 5K in support of their friend or family, and then they end up sharing their story that they've never shared with anybody, and then they end up becoming a volunteer. Or some other kind of generic stories is a friend or family sends a care pack. That friend finds out about our ministry, gets on our website, reads all the stories, connects with one of the moms that is on the stories, or one of the dads, ends up developing this year-long mentorship relationship, gets their medical bills covered by us, those kind of things. But a specific story I'll share is, all of our board and all of our staff either have a personal story or someone in their family walked through it. And I would say most probably have a personal story, but we have 3 board members who are just divinely connected. And I'm allowed to talk about their names, which is nice. So that's why I'll use them. But so it was about 3 years ago, we were trying to expand our board, and we hosted this dessert benefit just to kind of launch out of the ashes a second time, if you will. Hey, we're more than just a race. We have all these programs. We kind of were bringing that launch to the community. So my background is sales. And so I just kind of CC'd a bunch of emails from nonprofit partners. And nobody responded except for one woman called me. Her name's Christy. And she calls me and she's like, I got your email and I have to be involved in that ministry. Sorry, it's always a crazy story when you hear it. She's like, today is the 25th anniversary of my son who passed, who is stillborn. And it's always other people's stories nowadays that get me, and not my own, right? And so she just responded to that email because she saw the ministry, read our website, knew immediately she had to get involved. So she calls her friend, who she was co-workers with, who's about 20 years younger than her. And she was she knew that her friend had walked through a stillbirth about 2 years earlier. And so she calls and she goes, you have to come to this benefit with me and get plugged into this ministry. And the friend goes, I actually already know about it, because one of her friends from a support group, she was in a support group for stillbirth, and one of her friends is buried next to Hannah, or her son is buried next to Hannah. So Christy knew Lisa from work, who had a stillbirth 20 years after she did, and they connected at work. She kind of mentored her, but never had any formal relationship with her. And then Lisa's good friend, Kate is her name, they both had a stillbirth around the same time. And Kate's son, Jacob, is buried next to Hannah. We didn't know her. We don't know her family. There's obviously some connection somewhere as to how we ended up in the same spot. But so all 3 of them now have served on the board for the last 2 years, and, in just a huge capacity, and just kind of how the Lord, again, orchestrates that. They've all now, served in big ways other people and are affecting, telling their stories. And I would say that the woman, Christy, who it's been so long, she will even say now that, serving on the board is so impactful for her because she really didn't talk about it for years. And now she has an opportunity to finally heal. So it's just really cool to see what the Lord is doing. And I feel like every couple months you kind of look back and it's like, how did we get connected to that person, or how did we end up serving that person? It's just there's just this web of trickles of the Lord connecting people everywhere.
Yeah, man. It's amazing how the Lord makes these connections, and even us connecting with you, man. I mean, it was through loss of one of our team members ultimately that connected us with you guys, and just tremendous blessing to be connected with you. We're kind of running up against the time clock here. Going to wrap up here in just a bit, but I want you to share with folks how they can get connected with you guys, and maybe even some action steps that people could take to connect with you guys. And maybe, I'm not sure if you guys are national. I think you guys have at least a national reach in some ways, but maybe there's some other resources and things that people could take advantage of that are out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big way, our website has a ton of resources, stories, things like that. Our Instagram. So our website is outoftheashesfoundation.com. So you can find us there. If in terms of action items, I always tell people, if you know somebody who's walked through loss or is walking through loss or infertility, send them something. So go on our website, the outoftheashesfoundation.org. You can send them a card. Even if it's been 12 years, 25 years, send them a card. Tell them that you're thinking about them. Right? That'll be huge for them. If it's been more recent, send them one of our care packs. So that's just an action item if you know somebody. And we do have a big event coming up, October 18th. We actually launch tomorrow our marketing. And so it is here in Charlotte, the in-person event, but we have virtual teams all across the United States. So if you don't live near Charlotte, you can join as a virtual team. And so that's just a really cool community event. We'll probably have around 2,000 people this year.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
And then another action item, I think, is just follow us on Instagram. All of the things, if you want to join the prayer list or volunteer list or any of those things, are always on our Instagram to be able to do that. And our Instagram is Out of the Ashes Foundation.
Yeah, that's great, brother. So recently we've been just really burdened for prayer, and really like to wrap these episodes up with prayer. And I know that there are people that are watching, people that are listening, that maybe have been touched by a loss in this way. And so I wonder if you could just, you could wrap this thing up in prayer and pray for those who may have experienced that. And then we'll wrap up the episode.
Yes, absolutely. I'd be happy to do that. All right. Dear Lord, we thank you for today. We thank you for this opportunity to come and talk about your story and your creation, Lord. And I just pray for the listeners. I pray for those who have experienced loss, who have walked through this pain, Lord. I just pray that you would continue to surround them, Lord, that you would show your presence to them, that they would see you in the people that acknowledge their pain. They would see you just all around them, Lord. I pray that they would begin to wrestle with the questions, to ask them, to have the doubts, to point fingers at you, Lord, and just bring it all to you in prayer, and dive through your scripture to get the answers that they're looking for, Lord, to wrestle with them. They need that. They need you for healing, Lord. And ultimately, I pray that you, in your presence and in your time, that you would heal their hearts, that you would provide comfort, you would provide people to continue to surround them, or to start to surround them. You would give them the ability to share their story to one person today or this week that would be a representative of you, Lord, that would walk through them in their grief. I thank you for Brian and Daniel, and and what they're doing and allowing people to come and share their ministries and their stories. I pray that you would bless them and bless their time as well, Lord. We ask all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, brother. And all of you guys that are listening, you can check out their website. It's outoftheashesfoundation.org. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, it is .org. That's not wrong, yeah.
And check them out on Instagram. Certainly connect with those guys. You can reach out to us, info@lovelife.org. Check out our website, lovelife.org. We'd love to connect with you. We'd love to get feedback on this episode. Maybe it encourage you, challenge you in some way. We'd love to hear from you. And then, of course, we'd love to hear from you guys that are watching and listening of some suggestions for future episodes and guests that we can have on. Brother Theo, thank you for coming on, brother, and we'll continue to be praying for you and your wife and this amazing ministry that you guys are doing.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yes.
Thanks,
all right,
brother.
guys. Well, God bless all of you, and until next time, serve the Lord.